Good morning to all of you.
Morning.
It'll be a pleasure to get to know you as we work our way through these days together. Anytime I'm here, I'm accessible. I'm on duty the whole time. If you see me, I'm on duty. So you're welcome to approach, ask any questions. I'm sure lots of you have curiosities about the sources of some of the unusual things we do, some of the patterning that's grown up in NLP. And I can certainly help you with my version or my perceptions of what's happening. So you're welcome to approach me on all of those things, help yourself. My way of understanding how well I do is quite simple. It's how well you do. This is, as far as I can tell, a trainer ethic. The only relevant measurement of the success or the effectiveness of your work is what happens to the people who are purportedly the people who you wish to transfer the skill sets to, how well they come up in their own training, what kinds of practitioners and other students they produce as a function of the patterns. You took that piece of paper away, Michael. Where is that? the one that showed the steps that you got from the group.
8 steps.
The 8 steps, yeah. Well, somewhere around on a wall or in your notes, and will be made manifest by Carmen in great detail in any case. Our 8 steps is a presentation format. I have 2 things to say about it. We're going to insist that you master it so that we can point and thank you, Michael. You already have had the inductive experience of Michael making a presentation using these categories as the underlying organizational principle. And then, if I understand correctly from the briefing I got from him last night at dinner, he then asked you to identify what were the major pieces in the sequence that he went through. And this is what you came up with. This is ancient. This goes back to 1980s. When I was doing presentation skills in Monterey, California. And as such, it's something I want you to master, and I want you to put in your pocket and forget about it. So that you always have something you know that works. And then your job, of course, is to begin to vary your behavior, not wildly, but in a structured and very systematic way. If you look at these things, they're huge categories. What isn't medical? Am I framing right now? Of course I am. Naturalistic examples? I mean, all of these things are huge categories which give you a lot of room to wander around inside. The sequence, of course, is the thing for a syntactician. That's my background. For me, and the sequence, of course, is preparing the unconscious through a series of presentations, in particular the metaphor and the naturalistic examples. And then there's a living metaphor. One that's not verbal, but it's the actual demonstration piece, which allows people to begin to appreciate in a full sense what these things represent. Now, these are huge categories, and there's a lot of room to wander around inside of them. As I said a moment ago, the sequence is the thing as far as I can tell. So we're going to ask you to memorize this, have it in your pocket, you practice it obsessively, compulsively over the next couple of weeks, so that anytime there's a presentation, there's a reflex. Your unconscious, you've trained your unconscious to sequence the presentation in these categories. And as I said, once you've demonstrated mastery, then I'm going to ask you to put it in your pocket and start designing other sequences, testing other sequences by trial and error, so that you end up with lots of pockets full of choices about how to do this. Our insistence on this is sort of our insistence on a minimum quality sequence and presentation. And so, and it works. You'll find it very effective for your work. But the point is to master it and then push it into the unconscious, which is what mastery is about, so that it'll begin to erupt in possibly the same categories, even in different sequences. The cat chased the rat, and the rat chased the cat are 2 sentences composed of exactly the same 5 words. And they mean fundamentally different things. Sequence is a great deal of what we do in NLP. So once you've mastered this, then your ability to take these same categories and scramble them, or substitute categories for these categories. All of this is based on the fact that we certify you as having that in your pocket for any topic you want to present. Is this clear? One of the things you're going to have to deal with, I don't think it's a problem for you yet, but at some point in your development you're going to have to deal with, is the whole thing about getting people out of the superstition of a pattern. Every pattern, as far as I'm concerned, is a set of instructions about where to put your attention. That's all it is. We have a guy here. How do you say your name? Ben. Ben. Ben here has spent the last 4 years training himself to manipulate close-up magic, card tricks, etc. A lot of what he really actually does is the control of your attention. If he can calibrate where your attention is, he knows precisely which move to make at that time. Your attention somewhere else, suddenly magic occurs because he succeeded in calibrating where your attention was and did something which was outside of the scope of your attention at that time. And this is a great deal of what you're going to be doing here. And in particular, as you get better and better at training, and these patterns are more and more effective in terms of your ability to transfer them to other people, and they can demonstrate to your satisfaction they have received these and can actually make them work, will be to convince them to get out of the pattern. Just as I proposed a moment ago, we're going to insist on this until it's mastered, until it's a reflex, until you can do it on demand. And then we're going to invite you to put it in your pocket as a safety insurance policy, because you always know that works. And now you begin to explore. This is the spirit of NLP from my point of view. A mastery. Now, what mastery? Mastery. How do you know you mastered a pattern? It comes natural. This is pretty good. Unpack it a little more for me, Ben.
Your congruence application.
Your congruence application, also a good characteristic.
You obtain the same results as the person that had the breath.
Okay, so he's referring now to, he's quoting out of someplace, I don't know. He's referring to the fact that in modeling, NLP modeling, the criteria, you enter what's called a know-nothing state, where you literally take all these hard-earned and sophisticated and wrong maps of the world that you've been building for decades, many of you, and you set it to one side. It's available to you at a certain point, but for the moment, it constitutes a barrier to learning. Help me understand what I just said. How could your hard-earned maps, yes?
Your filters.
They're filters, exactly. They're filters, exactly. So if you perceive the world through the filters of the past, you have essentially denied yourself access to new information. So one of the things you're after here is to use these tools to create a systematic behavior at the unconscious level, which requires no attention on your part. Now, that's the mastery. That's the first step in the mastery. So in a normal, quote, NLP pattern, outside of the issue of trainers' patterns, if you tell me that you have mastery of something like this, I'm going to ask you two things. The first one is, are you successful in self-application consistently? That is, do you use it for yourself to create choice? And remember, from my point of view at least, the only justification for any NLP pattern is the creation of choice. That's all. And if that works, then you're doing a good job. So the first thing I'm going to go, can he apply this to himself successfully? And if the answer is yes, that's the first criteria. The second criteria for me is, what is the intention behind each step in this sequence of patterns? Because you're going to encounter, remember, every pattern is a lie. They don't exist. These things are not natural out there in the world outside of human society. But inside of human society, these are recurrent patterns of interaction. And much of NLP is the ability to extract from everyday life, in those moments of excellence when you're performing very well, what is the underlying process, what is the underlying structure of what I've been doing successfully here. So there's this push-pull. You have these categories, the attention-fixing points, which are the set of steps you go through in an application of the pattern. You will encounter, in some significant percentage of the people who you use these with, inabilities to perform according to the standard pattern. Many of the NLP patterns, for example, presuppose the ability to create visual images and project them onto the world so that you can use them as a foil, as a way of transferring the gains you make with the client into the contexts which are not explicitly available in your office or in the training room, out into the world where they actually belong. Because it doesn't matter what you do in the training room, it matters how it transfers out to the contexts where the person wants to increase choice or improve the quality of their performance. Those are the only two things we're doing. It's quite simple. Now, after you've done this, just as I proposed with respect to this 8-step sequence here, the finest thing you can do for yourself is throw it away. That is, get rid of it. Some of you may have had this experience already. Check your own personal history. You learn a couple of 3, 4 patterns that are sort of a cluster. They sort of apply to similar classes of events with clients or in business or whatever your field of application is. And you start with step 1 in pattern A. And you're working along and working with Ben. And at some point, I suddenly discovered, to my surprise, I made a segue over into pattern B. And I'm on step 4 of pattern B. And then suddenly, after a bit later, I discover I moved over to pattern C and D. That is, I have given up the rigidity of the sequence of attention-fixing points, which is called a pattern. And I'm being driven by calibration. And when that happens, you're starting to get into a serious area of pattern.